Welcome to today's episode on Coffee in the Library. Don't mind my voice, I'm held captive by the flu. Today we'll be looking at poverty in Zambia and how to beat it, looking at a real life example and the life experience of someone who grew up in Zambia and made it out. Because in these times where there's a lot to complain about, the currency, the state of business, how hard it is to do business, the highness of taxes, many things that we can complain about, that we may think that there's no hope. There's no way that we can actually get out of the problems that we're in. So let's dive into the life of someone who lived as a Christian and made it out. And yeah, we'll learn from their experience. So I'll have our guests introduce themselves.
Good morning. My name is Nchima Nchito. I'm a Christian, a lawyer, a husband of one wife, a father of 3 children, and grandfather of 4.
Wow. Okay. So let's just dive right into the discussion. We had the conversation before, where in the conversation, the word underdevelopment was thrown in. And you had mentioned that you have got a different opinion on whether Zambia is underdeveloped. Could you shed more light on that?
Yes, I think that the question, when we talk about underdevelopment, what are we talking about? Who are we comparing ourselves to? And if you think about this country, 60 years plus after independence, we live in a global village. We are all connected. So there is very little that you cannot do in Zambia that you can do elsewhere. So that sometimes I think that we want to use certain terms like underdevelopment, for lack of a better word, maybe like a cop-out. Yes, we are not as developed as we could have been, but there has been a lot of changes, and I think that we have caught up as a country. So I think that we are not underdeveloped in that sense unless we contextualize it.
Yeah, okay. And I know that just before the podcast, we had talked about how I had mentioned that things are bad during this time, the economy is bad and all these things are bad. And you mentioned things are not as bad as people make them out to be. Would you like to share more light on that?
Yes, I think I would. If you think about inflation is now at 15%. The interest rate, the MPR is I think at 14. The lending rate is at 34. Sounds high.
Yeah.
When I started working in 1987, the lending rate I think was 160% or something like that. Inflation was what is called hyperinflation. In my first job as a lawyer, qualified out of what you call Ziale now, I was getting paid 1,000 kwacha.
Wow.
A suit in cereals. Those of you who are my age will remember that cereals was the Zambian company that was making suits. And so if you wanted a suit, there were no import. There were very serious import restrictions. A suit in cereals cost 750. So I could not buy a suit out of my salary, even if I wanted. So, but we survived, okay, and we thrived. So I think that sometimes we say things are bad because we haven't seen worse. And I think that we should learn to be grateful for what we have and try and improve. There is a saying that I was told when I was on campus that many years ago that has stuck with me when we were complaining about something as young people then. And this older gentleman said to us, guys, I cried for shoes until I found a man without feet. Okay, so things are in context. You can be crying for shoes. So you have feet to put your shoes on. And you find somebody who actually doesn't have feet and he's not crying.
Yeah. Okay, so that gives us at least a mirror into how you're looking at the world, which is very important, even as we look through your story. So I'll just start from. I know this would be a very hard task, but could you give us like some context in regards to where you are at now in terms of not just restricted to financially, but generally, we're looking and saying, okay, you've made it out of the bracket of where you can say no poverty and all these things. You're where some people hope to be. So could you give some context of what that looks like?
Okay, I think that for me the context and that's very important. Context about making it. It's a question of you need to ask yourself, where did you start from? What did you want to make? Okay. For me, by God's grace, I got saved when I was very young. I incidentally went to Libala Secondary School, which is very near where we're having this meeting. And I got saved in Form 1, what was then grade 8. And by God's grace, by the time I was qualifying, I was already a mature Christian. And so for me, my desire in my life, the way I have understood my obligation as a person, God calls me to look after myself. When I acquired a wife and children, to look after them. And so for me, if I'm able to provide for my family and myself, then I'm happy. Okay, so that the Lord has enabled me to do. And I like to laugh with my friends that even the term profit, I have redefined it for myself. That if there's food on the table, there's fuel in my car, I have paid school fees, I have made profit.
Yeah.
Because the Lord has promised to provide for me, for my needs. So when He provides, then I have made it. And the Lord has come through. He has not promised anyone riches, contrary to what we hear from certain other circles. He has promised to provide our needs. And when He does, then we should be happy.
Okay. You had mentioned that it's important if you want to know if someone has made it, where they started from.
Yeah.
So could you give us, so that we have context of where you began, like your childhood, your background, family life, where you used to live, those details.
Thank you very much. I was born in Lusaka. I grew up in Lusaka. I am the third born in a family of 11. My mother was a homemaker. My late dad was a small-time businessman all the time that I knew him, with the exception of maybe a period of about 6 years when he tried to find gainful employment. I grew up in Libala Stage 1, again, which is very near here. I went to Lusakasa Primary School, and then went to Libala Secondary, and then went to university. And I like to say, for instance, people, which is a question that you might ask at some point, I'm sure, but I'll answer it before. Why did you become a lawyer? For me, I think I was following those who went ahead of me. My older sister is a medical doctor. My late brother was a computer, he was a system analyst. So they went to university. And so for me, it looked like you go to primary school, where I followed my brother. I went to secondary school, I followed my brother, I was at Libara. So I followed him to university. And lo and behold, I went into law school. And so that's been my trajectory. I'm not one of those who has the benefit of saying, I'd always wanted to be a lawyer. No, I'm not sure I had met a lawyer before I went to law school. So yes, I grew up in what we would say those days in the common, and yeah, not deprived. I mean, we had, most times we had 3 square meals. What those meals comprised of is another thing, but we had them. And so we grew up in that kind of setup.
Okay. So within that same circle, what things do you think during your childhood that could have been valid excuses to why you would say, no, because of my childhood, because of these elements present when I was younger, that's why I am, if you're still in poverty or still in a state where you can't provide well enough for the people around you, and you blame those circumstances? Are there certain things that you're like, okay, this thing I could have used as an excuse? This other thing, yeah.
Look, there are many. I mean, like we say, I grew up in the compound. I went to a compound primary school. I like to joke that I am one of the few, there are many of us now, who had the distinction of going to a secondary school that was built by the colonialists for Africans. And if you go to the Bara secondary school, even now, it looks like a primary school. And so it could have been possible to make all those things as things that could have caused me not to succeed. I was just telling you earlier that we lived in a very hyper inflationary environment where things were hard. But I don't think that any of those should be excuses, because we are called upon to work, and to work hard in whatever you put your hand to, or wherever the Lord places you. So I think that, yes, it's possible to, if you are looking for excuses, you will find them.
Okay. Then what of, on the other side of the coin, the things that were present that God placed in your life that you're like, I have served the Lord faithfully, and that's why I'm where I am, and it would have been inexcusable for me to reach these levels because of the things that He has put in, these things that He put in my life, the people, maybe the skills or whatever surrounded your growing up.
I think that for me, the most important thing that happened to my life is coming to know the Lord Jesus Christ. And being saved, I mean, when I look around, and we have had these discussions with a number of my friends and sometimes members of my family, when we look around in the circumstances where we grew up and think about how the Lord has been to us, the only thing that sets us apart, or sets me apart from some of my colleagues, is that I knew God. And so knowing God helped me make the right decisions, because then God became important in my life, and I sought to honor Him. And my desire has been, as much as He grants me the grace in all my ways, to acknowledge Him and to always seek to do that which is right before Him. I fail many times, but I get up and I still head towards that goal. And I think that, truthfully speaking, that's the only thing that has set me apart, because I can honestly say that I had friends who were much more intelligent than me, who were probably more hardworking than I was, but because they didn't know the Lord, they made decisions that made the shipwreck of their lives. So I think that the one thing that has set me apart is just God's grace.
Could you give some examples? So I'm asking this question from the perspective of the Christian who is saying, but I'm also a Christian, but I still have the excuses. I still feel like it's impossible for me to get out of the place that I am. How exactly does the faith end up changing my narrative? So like some practical examples in terms of.
Okay, I think that how the faith ends up changing our lives is if we strive to live our faith. One of the problems that we have as Zambians is that we can be very syncretic. We live multiple lives. Okay, I am a different person at work. I'm a different person at church. I'm a different person with my family. Now, that's not what the Lord calls us to be. We are to be believers wherever we are. And our lives should be the same everywhere. And I think that one of the problems that we experience as human beings and as Christians is when you want to go after the things that the world goes after, in the way that the world goes after, then you will not succeed. But also, the Lord has promised only to provide for us. I like to give an example that if everybody was meant to be rich, why were not all the apostles rich? Mm-hmm. They were not. In the Old Testament, how many Solomons do we find? So what we should strive for, and as we are told in the scriptures, is that godliness plus contentment is great gain. And that's what we should be striving for. And yes, the Lord, by his grace, if you have done your bit, I have worked hard, I have committed myself, the Lord will look after us. Like I think David says, I think in Psalm 37 or 39, I was young, now I was old. I have never seen the righteous forsaken or their children begging bread. We may be at different levels because the Lord, by his grace, he is sovereign. He will bless us differently, but we will not go without.
Okay, so looking at that, could you say, because you had mentioned earlier that you had only met a lawyer after you're in university.
Yeah.
At what point did you start seeing like the various things that God had placed in you that ended up like shaping your direction? Because I know one of the things that people struggle with is like, what's God's will for my life? Where does he want me to be? So when it came to that decision making process in terms of this is the direction I want to go, when it came to like really applying yourself in the area that you're like, okay, I think this is where I would be really good in, what are some of the innate abilities that you started seeing?
I think that, look, for me, like I was saying, I went to university. I was first admitted in the School of Education in my first year. I then looked around and decided what would I want to do. And one of the things I thought I had was the ability, maybe to speak well, to argue. And so I thought when law was brought to my attention, I can't remember how, I decided that I wanted to go and do a quota transfer and go into the law school. I always joke, and it's the truth, that if I didn't go to law school, I'd have done a history double major, and I would be a history professor somewhere now. So for me, again, it's by God's providence. So I went into law school and finished and went into law practice and qualified. And what the Lord has granted me is an ability to be diligent and to be focused. But also, I think that one of the things that helps me is to always know the possibility of failing. And that makes me work hard. And in consequence, I like to say that the world belongs to the average man, not to the genius, because the average man is afraid of failure. And because of being afraid of failure, we work harder. So if there is an ability, it's just that knowledge that it's possible to fail. So when I'm given a task, I try to do it to the best of my ability, always.
Is there a specific moment in your life where that thought was shaped? Did you experience some sort of failure or something that really like grounded that belief in you?
I can't point to a single incident. I think again, character is built over experiences. You experience something and you realize that, okay, so this is how this works. So it's over. I think it's over a period that this has been shaped up. And you see, hindsight is 20/20 vision. Trying to look back it's possible to try and pick out things that were not there because I did not see them. But in the rare view, you can claim to have seen them. But no, I think that, again, it's just putting your head down, doing the best that you can at whatever you are doing. And yeah, sometimes you are saying about people in your life, sometimes it's very almost random. I'll give you an example that will explain that. When I went to university in first year, my roommate was studying engineering. And I think he was in third year, I think, when I was in first year. So he was a Christian, and he was much older than me. And one of the things that he used to do to me, which now I look back, I think, yeah, that helped me. If a few days he hadn't seen me sit on my desk to read, he would say to me, Warumi, this week I haven't seen you on your desk. What's going on? And just that. And I would sit and try and do some work. But also what I learned, even from secondary school, is that it's slow by slow. I am one of those who believes in incremental work, continuous work, again, because I knew that I was not as gifted as other people. I could not spend the whole term without reading and then just read in 2 days and go and pass. So I am one of those who must read always. So when we were in secondary school, when we were at Luara Secondary School, we would remain behind after school and sometimes read, go there on a Saturday. So that kind of consistency is one of the things that I have discovered that works more than the great leap forward. One day you just wake up and think that I am going to read everything. If you haven't been reading, it will not work.
Okay. Then throughout your journey up to this point, what are some of the skills that you have found that you learned and found to be very valuable, that if, like, for the average person, you would actually recommend that learn this skill, you need it in ways that you might not even see now, but it's very vital?
Again, for me, I've said one thing is consistency, timekeeping, respect for others, and yeah, if you always realize that there will always be people who are better than you, and do not be afraid to say, I don't know, and ask for help. People are usually generous and they are willing to help, other than if you stand out as if you know everything. I think for me, those are the things that have helped me.
On the aspect of respect of others, like, how exactly does it play out?
Okay, I think that one of the things is, for instance, respect for others, even professionally. When you are trying to resolve a problem, as an example, I mean, that's what we do as lawyers, always know that it's possible that you are wrong. So when you hear a view that is different from you, pay attention, okay? And try and see that, is it possible that he is actually right? That helps. So you don't look down. Somebody gives an opinion and you say, what do you know? So I know. No, but be willing to listen, okay? And one of the things that I think, and again, maybe it's about my legal training, I always say, when you go to court, there are two sides to a matter. Now, I always tell my colleagues that, you see, unless the other guys are mad, they've come to court because they believe they can also succeed. So now we believe we have a good case. So we must examine their case and see, is it possible that they know something that we don't know? So that's how you express respect for your friends. Don't always think, no, they don't know anything. My position is perfect, it's solid. You might just be surprised. But if you take the trouble to examine, you might just realize, there is an aspect that I didn't take into account, and then you provide for it.
Okay. So looking at that, so we've seen how God, like, placed certain experiences in your life, certain skills, and has allowed you to learn. What of people? I know you have mentioned one or two people who are instrumental in your development up to this point, but are they other people who are quite pivotal that you look at and say, this person, truly, God sent them into my life so that he can achieve this particular thing because they were that great. And so, who are those people and how did you meet?
That's a bit difficult. I'm not sure that they are people like that, with the possible exception of my late older brother. Okay, I have always said that I have had the benefit of he was always there for me. Okay, I when I went to grade 1, he's the one who took me to school with him. When I went to secondary school, I found him, and he was a very intelligent man. So I think that in terms of humanly speaking, that's the person that the Lord placed in my way, that I always, was almost like my guide. Like I said to you earlier, I went to university because you went to university. He had my older sister. So in terms of after that, I think that, again, it's just consistency. It's growing in the faith, understanding my position in life, and learning humility, that there is nothing that I have that I did not receive from the hand of the Lord. So to him and him alone, I owe all that I am, all that I have, because without him, truly, I can do nothing. Like I said to you earlier, when I look at my background and where I came from and where we grew up from and my friends, the only thing that set me apart is coming to a saving knowledge of the Lord. So I think that that's, for me, that's the one shining beacon in my life.
So could you go back for us, giving us more detail? When you started, you had a plan. I'm assuming you had the plan, but anyway, you can pour more light on it. When you started, you had a plan. You wanted certain things. You wanted maybe your life to look a certain way. You had certain ambitions and certain life directions. I know that a lot of it was shaped during your university days. Am I right to assume that?
Look, for me, again, I would be lying if I said I had a plan. I didn't have a plan. If, truth be told, if there is something that I wanted to do in my life, it's just to try and do better than my parents and to look after myself. I think that was my only plan. If there are things that happened in my life, it's thinking, if I can't look after myself, what's going to become of me? So for me, again, to say that I had a plan, I had a trajectory, no. I mean, these days I hear very nice plans. No, by the time I'm 35, I'm going to have a house. By the time, no, I didn't have those plans. I wanted to look after myself. I tried to do that, and the Lord, by His grace, has provided for me that. So maybe it's good to have a plan, but I didn't have one.
Okay, so at least for anyone who's listening, it's like, okay, me, I don't have a plan, I don't know what to do. It's like, if you just focus on doing your best in whatever you're given, at least you know that you won't be in a space where you are failed. You'll be able to take care of yourself. You'll be good.
Yeah.
Generally.
For me, the other thing that is important to me, and that's what I tell people, is that we must learn to be content. But how do we become content in practice? I think that is an important thing. And for me, the question is to do this. In life, wherever you are, look back and see how many people are behind you, so that you should be grateful for where the Lord has placed you. After that, look in front and see how many people are ahead of you, so that you do not become complacent and you work hard to move on, so that you see it's possible to go ahead. It's also possible to slide back. And if you keep only looking behind, you will become very complacent and very content because you think, hey, look at the multitude behind me. I am doing very well. If you look only ahead, you will become despondent because you will say, look at how many people have left me. Really, I am not going anywhere. I have failed. For me, look back, look in front. Then you place yourself in the right place and in the right space. The problem is most of us are either only looking back or only looking in front, but look both directions. Then you can put yourself in the proper space where you are.
That's actually I was going to ask, but you've already answered it. It was going to be a follow-up question on when you're content, how do you make sure you don't become complacent and just accept things like, okay, at least I've reached a point where I'm able to put 3 meals on the table, there's a house, and so I don't even need to move forward anymore. But at least having that, when you look back and say, I'm grateful for where God has brought me, you look forward and say, I'm still alive, there's still room for me to move even forward.
Yeah.
Throughout this entire journey, there are certain things that it has cost you to reach this point. There's certain maybe like habits that you had to drop. There's certain people that you had to let go of, maybe. And so, what would you say reaching this point has cost you?
Look, for me, one of the things that is very cardinal as a believer is just to realize that it doesn't help one as a believer to keep non-Christian friends as your confidants and your bosom friends. I mean, we are with them in the world. We are in the world, but we are not of the world. So we must always be conscious about that. And so it's to realize that my role models and my examples should not be non-believers because they are chasing after things that I'm not supposed to be chasing after. So if there's something that it has cost me, it's just that, yeah. And obviously, maybe in my younger years, maybe working too hard. Sometimes you find yourself in a place where the Lord places you where there's so much work, and what people are now talking about work-life balance, maybe that suffered at some point. But I think that we can always find time. And what one needs to do is to create time for things that matter. I remember many years ago, talking to a friend of mine, he's late, unfortunately, who was a doctor and was studying medicine. And this guy was doing so many things. He was writing textbooks, he was studying medicine. And I said to him, but how do you cope? He says, no, for things that matter to you, you will always find time. And that, I think, is a lesson that I've taken. For things that matter to you, you will find time.
Okay, when you mentioned the work-life balance, it actually got me thinking about the various debates that go around. There's some people who believe that there's no such thing as a work-life balance, while others believe that it's something that's there and something that you should be very deliberate to enforce. What is your opinion on the work-life balance?
I think it's possible to work too hard. It's possible to fill all your work full time with work, but you are a father if you are blessed with children, and you are a husband, and you are someone's child. So you need to find time and be deliberate about fulfilling all those obligations. When there is work to be done, do the work, but you must strive to find time. Like, for instance, except in very exceptional circumstances, I will not work on Sunday. As the proverbial saying goes, unless the goat falls in the well, I'm not working on Sunday. And you make everybody around you know that I'm not working on Sunday. So on Sunday, I'm going to church. In the afternoon, I'm spending time with my family, and that is important. But it's possible for you to be looking out for assignments and extra jobs so that you can make the extra money. But time is also important. So there is such a thing as a work-life balance. But again, it's everything in moderation. You must understand that, when there's work to be done, do the work. When there are responsibilities to be discharged, discharge them.
Have you ever come across a situation or seen someone where you're like, you're working too little and you're convinced that you're working enough? Have you ever seen such situations, or what are some of the, and so this is someone trying to figure out how to balance work and life.
Yeah.
And they're trying to see how much is too much work, right? And how little is like, okay, this amount of work is not going to give you the results you want. How have you ever seen that, or what would you say?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen that. Look, firstly, it depends on what you are doing. If you are in a formal job, it's an 8 to 17 job. You must give that minimum. The 8 to 17 must be given. It must be given. You must give it all the time. If there are extra work to be done, you must give the extra work. Yeah, I have seen people, yes, who are not willing, firstly, to go the extra mile. They will not come in on Saturday even when there's work to be done. There are others, yes, who are, for lack of a better word, who are malingerers, who even in the normal working time, they are not discharging their responsibilities. And sometimes there are ways where this is done, where a job that should take you 30 minutes, you are taking 2 hours.
Yeah.
You are not you are not putting in the best. And in most jobs, if you are in employment, there will be an assessment and you will be found wanting. If you are running your own business, your business will fail. It's not rocket science. If you are not putting in the hours, it will show. And yeah, there are people sometimes who complain, no, but I'm not going ahead. But what are you doing? How much time are you putting? How much effort are you putting in what you are doing? That's, yeah. Those are many.
Okay. Then, and one of the things that we talk about sometimes, or comments that we hear, is the idea that no, money can buy happiness. Now, so for you, you have been a Christian for a long time, even like from the point where you're saying like, no, I grew up in a combine, right, all the way to where you're at, where you have a law firm, and you've been running it for years. What has been, how has your perspective changed throughout that period in regards to money? So from before, what you're thinking money would do, or how you're processing it to influence your life, to when you actually had it and how that changed. Yeah.
Look, again, maybe something that I should have said when I was asking about influences in my life. One of the other influences, I think, was my father. Like I said to you, my father was a small-time businessman. My father taught us from a young age that money that's not yours is not yours. And you must leave other people's money alone. Okay, I'll give you 2 examples that demonstrate what he used to do. My father used to run this small business. He would come home. Those days, there were a lot of coins. Count his money, the paper money, the coins, and leave them on the sitting room table and go and sleep. And he doesn't expect anyone to touch that money because he says, it's not your money. So we grew up with that attitude. So that attitude helped me to the way that I relate with money. Okay, I remember another time, I must have been in grade 7 then, and I was young, so I must have been 12, 13. My father writes a check and he's sending me to the bank in town. It used to be Greenless Bank those days. So he was sitting with a friend of his when he was sending me. So the friend says, but you're sending this boy to go and collect this money. What if he goes and misuses it? He says, no, he knows it's not his money. So he will bring it back. So it's again creating that trust and responsibility. So for me, that's how I've grown up. If money is not mine, it doesn't matter how much it is. It's not mine. It's fine. So my relationship with money is just that it's a means of exchange. It's for use to buy things. I have never had the desire to have lots of money for money's sake, because then what? So I think that that has been my attitude always. So money is a means of exchange. Money is just that it's for use. If I have things that I need to buy, I'll buy. If I have people that I need to help and believe they're entitled to the help, I'll help them. So my attitude towards money was developed like that from a young age. And then obviously having become a Christian, it was consolidated, and that has helped me.
Yeah. When you say it was consolidated and that has helped you, what was...
You see, for me, when you look at what the scripture tells us, okay, I mentioned earlier that we must learn to be content, with what we have. And so long as we have clothes, a roof over our head, we should be fine. And the scripture on the other side says and warns us that those who desire to be rich throw themselves into temptations and have made shipwreck of their lives. So if you want to be rich at any cost, so having learned that I must be afraid of other people's money, and I must work for my money, then I become a Christian and realize that the Lord also tells me to do the same things with a better reason. So my upbringing is consolidated in that way.
Okay, that makes sense. So, is it a myth? Money can buy happiness. Is there any validity in that for anyone who's still thinking? I remember someone once said when they heard from someone online who was rich say no, money doesn't buy happiness, and like, it's fine, I'll be sad in my Bugatti. So it's like, do you think that that's something that people are lying to themselves about, or is there some validity in it?
They're lying to themselves. Happiness is a state of mind. So believing that money can buy happiness is chasing a mirage. Like I said, money is a means of exchange to buy things. So when you are saying money can buy happiness, what you are saying is that possessions can buy happiness, but possessions are innate. Okay, so they don't exude anything. So they can't provide you happiness. And if, imagine, so you have money and you marry someone, or someone marries you for your money. It's not you they are seeing. It's money that they are seeing. So they don't love you. They want your money. And sooner or later, it will become clear even to you. So in that sense, happiness is a state of mind. And we must be happy, particularly as believers. We must be happy in the Lord. And that's the only place where you find true happiness. Because if money bought happiness, how many rich people in the West have committed suicide? How many rich people in the West, particularly, but it's coming even here, how many well-to-do people are drug addicts? What are they chasing? Happiness. Okay, so they thought money would buy happiness. They get the money, then somebody tells them, no, actually the drugs will buy you the happiness. So use your money to buy the drugs to bring you the happiness, and then they buy the drugs and they're not getting the happiness, and they keep on chasing the drugs until they overdose and they die. So they are chasing a mirage. Happiness is only in the Lord. True happiness is in God and God alone. Anything else is an idol and you're chasing a mirage. And the world is replete with examples. I don't have to give any examples. Like we were saying earlier, we live in a global village. All you need to do is Google how many rich people have committed suicide, how many rich people have died of a drug overdose, and your pages will explode. So the myth is blown.
Okay. As you were rising, especially within the professional space, moving from primary, secondary, going to university, working in a law firm, starting your own law firm, throughout this entire process, as you were especially as a Christian and as a Zambian, what are some of what are some of the things or lies that you were disillusioned of throughout the entire process, where you thought, oh, things work like this, then when you transition, it's like, no, actually things don't work like this, and you realize that's actually a lie, and you start thinking rightly? What are some of them that you think the typical Zambian might be like working under, that might even be hindering their progress?
Okay, I think for me, I don't think I believed them at any point, but things that I see create problems for people is that people don't believe that hard work brings success. Okay, they believe that there is a different formula to success, and in Zambia, in my view, there are three things that people think will bring you success. Mm-hmm. People believe that everybody who's doing well is corrupt. They must have stolen from someone, because you can't just succeed by hard work. That's the one side. The religious will believe that you go to a papa and sow a seed, and then it will give you success. The others say you go to a witch doctor and you will make money. No, none of those things bring success. Hard work and God's providence and sustenance will bring you success. So, and the belief also that you need to know someone to succeed. I have seen it a lot of times, but that's not how the Lord is faithful. When I'll give you an example to demonstrate. When I went to university, after we finished university, we needed to go for attachment. And the only law firm I knew of, I mean, maybe there were many, but somehow I had heard a bit more about Jackson Partners. And it was in very interesting circumstances, because Jackson Partners have been collecting debt from my father. So that's how I got to know that there was a firm called Jackson Partners. I had never met anybody there. I applied for attachment and went and sat one day. And I remember that I sat the whole morning from about 8:30 in the morning until maybe it was 11 before this man, Mr. Katongo, saw me. And he talked to me and he gave me an opportunity. And that's how I interned at Jackson Partners. When I finished and passed, I went back to him and he says, I can offer you a job. And that's what happened. So it's not like my father went and spoke to him and they didn't know each other. So again, it's this belief that you need to know someone. No, we just need to try. And I have had, fortunately, I've only had 3 working places. When I left Jack's, I joined ZCCM. Again, I applied. We were called for interviews. I remember joking when we went for those interviews, there were 6 of us chasing one job. Mm-hmm. And I remember sitting with my colleagues, I think 2 of whom were ahead of me, 2 or 3 were ahead of me. One was, we were same intake. I think there might have been a guy behind me. I said, guys, we are all sitting here looking for this job, but only one person is getting it. And providentially, I got the job. And I worked there for 7.5 years or thereabouts. I stopped and formed a practice with my brother, where again I have been ever since. It's by God's providence.
Yeah. Okay. Even as we conclude, just an overview, could you just give a couple of comments about how, in God's sovereignty, how He's worked throughout all your circumstances, so that you can not just achieve what you have achieved, but so that He can use you? Firstly, what has He been able to use you to do? And are these like random things where you're able to find like, oh, actually, I think this is where He wants to mainly apply me? And how has He, even when you said, oh, I don't have a plan, but how has He been pushing you towards that direction until you're like, now I can clearly see what He's been doing?
I think that, to say this side of heaven that I can clearly see what God is doing, I'm not a prophet, so I can't see. But look, how the Lord has used me is that I try to be faithful, for instance, at church and serve in a number of ministries at church and avail myself. And by God's providence, again, in most places where we serve, the Lord uses our elder to appoint you to work. And we work. One of the things that I think the Lord has helped, the things that I can do, I think that if I am gifted, I think I have two gifts that I am very sure about. The gift of teaching, so I can teach at church when I'm given the opportunity and I teach. I think the Lord has given me the gift of administration, which I think, unfortunately for us as believers, we tend to overlook. We believe that anybody can do administration, but just look at how we organize ourselves and you'll see that we need to look for people who actually are gifted. And I think the Lord has helped me. And so I have used those gifts by his providence to achieve whatever it is that I have achieved.
Okay.
Yeah.
We have come to the end of this podcast. Hopefully you have learned a number of things. You have been able to see how despite the state Zambia is in, there's still a way out, because you've just heard the story of a time where it was worse. And this is someone who went through that period of time relying on God. And even as he mentioned, one of the key aspects that he thanks the Lord for is that he got saved young. So even as he was developing his career, he was developing it as a Christian. You had mentioned that one of the ways is you look back, such a grateful, and look forward. Is there anything that you can share with us that you are looking forward and say, okay, there's still room for me to?
No, where I think where I have reached now, I think that unless the Lord himself shows me a way and opens something, I think he has brought me as far as I think he wanted to bring me. Obviously, I cannot tell the future. I like to joke, for those who studied history, there was a textbook we used to use in history called Snail Groove. And there was a photo there of Winston Churchill on a train. And I like the caption. At 65, when most men retire, Winston Churchill became prime minister. So I'm in my 60s now. It's possible that the Lord has used me as far as he wants. He might have other things for me to do, but that's for him to decide. For me, I'll keep on doing what I'm doing. I'll keep on working, because I still haven't found a formula to find food without money. So, but as to what happens, as to what the next chapter might be, it's up to the Lord.
Okay. Thank you for watching. Unless our guest has anything to say, we'll come to the end.
No, thank you very much for the opportunity.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Coffee in the Library. We would like to make these episodes as beneficial as possible for you. So we need your help. Subscribe, like the video, and also leave a comment of, one, the kind of topics you'd like to deal with, but also two, how we can improve on delivering the most value to our viewers. From us, it is bye.